Welcome to Universal Studios Hollywood Halloween Horror Nights. And behind the screens, a look at this year's event. Please welcome to the stage, John Murdy and Chris Williams.
How you doing? Well, thank you first and foremost. Thank you, all of you, for joining us, not only at Fan Preview Night, but at this little behind-the-scenes panel we're going to do to tell you a little bit of what went into creating Halloween Horror Nights 2019. I'm John Murdy. I'm Creative Director, Executive Producer of HHN.
And I'm Chris Williams. I'm Art Director of HHN. And thank you so much for coming out and checking this out. We really appreciate this tonight.
So what we thought we'd do, and by the way, we brought some friends. I don't know if you've heard. Yeah? Do you guys know who's going to join us out here tonight? First, Chris and I are going to take you through a little bit about how we create HHN. We're going to use examples from the mazes we're doing this year. Have you guys gotten out to the park and seen some mazes? I've seen two. We've been doing a lot of press tonight. But after that, we're going to bring out our friends / Eli Roth, Greg Nicotero, and we're going to have a little chat about working together in the past. So let's start things off. This is the lineup for this year's event, obviously. House of a Thousand Corpses, Holidays in Hell, The Walking Dead, Jordan Peele's Us, and The Curse of Pandora's Box. But wait, there's more. Because this year we're doing more mazes than ever before. We're doing 10 mazes. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Stranger Things. Creep Show. Universal Monsters Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. That's right. And last but not least, Ghostbusters.
Hey, bro.
Yeah.
You got a favorite?
You know, I never have a favorite. They're like all of our children. We love them all equally. What we're going to do at first is take you through the maze design process, and to do that, I'm going to use an example from The Curse of Pandora's Box, and we're going to talk real quick about concept design. Because this is an original maze, it started with research on the internet. This was actually Chris's idea. Chris came up with the idea of Pandora's Box. Have you guys gone through it? Yeah? Did you like it?
Yeah! Oh, right on.
What we thought we'd do is we take the story of Pandora and combine it with Greek mythology and bring in some of the monsters and creatures from Greek mythology. So the first thing I did, Chris had this idea about this giant box that would magically open, and we didn't even know how we were going to do that, and then you'd walk inside it. So we thought the setting for that should be a curiosity shop, like you would find in Victorian London.
So in the idea of the box, have you ever heard of a Dybbuk box?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a Dybbuk box is, I guess, basically in Jewish mythology, like a box that has an evil spirit in it. If you open that box, it'll unleash. But in a sense, what I was kind of thinking about is how can we translate that to this? And I thought, well, what would be cool is that if the box can open and you enter into it and enter into its world.
So I did a bunch of visual research. These are all images that I pulled when we were conceptually designing this maze. And then I gave it to Chris, and he did. You can tell us what you did there.
This is, over here on this side, this is kind of my chicken scratch drawing that I did, I think, probably in one of my production management meetings, sorry team, but it's really just a rough coming up with idea in respect to the box. Actually, you can look and see that there's a logo on the top, but you can't see my name at the bottom. It's on a memo pad.
Yeah, there's a Universal logo on the top.
Yeah, so it's on a memo pad actually that I just kind of sketched this out with the box and her in a skeletal figure with all these corpse hands reaching up and to her, and really trying to make it look, you know, even though it's just a, you know, just a chicken scratch sketch, and that's what I really call it. or a napkin rendering, but that just really helps spur to I can get it to a designer and we can push that even further. And then on the other side, that's one of my working ground plans. So that's
and these change like a lot,
they
like
change
multiple times. And then once we get past that, we get into the drawing package, which is the formal drawing package. And the example we're going to use for that is Stranger Things. And this is your ground plan, I believe.
This is a ground plan that's generated by my head art director, Brandy Creason. And so when I do a working ground plan, what you had saw before on the previous slide, that I would hand that to her, and then she would tighten things up, generate this. And you can even see, I think in the top middle image area, you know, a down view of our mind flayer up there too. So, you know, we take this and then turn it over to our architect who turns into a CAD drawing.
And then the next step in the process is what's called the scenic elevations. And for this, we're going to use House of a Thousand Corpses, a little place called Captain Spaulding's Museum of what? Monsters and Madmen. So this is your original elevation, right?
Yeah, and that was done by Troy Zimmerman, who really puts a lot of illustrative quality into our stuff, and that's what we're really looking for. Even within here, there's...
And Troy started here as a character in our Thing maze, and we found out that he had this whole background in design. So, and he still loves to scare. So if you're going through us, and I don't want to give away the scares, you might be scared by Troy. And then next is the character design. I'm going to use Holidays in Hell as an example. These are just two of the characters that we designed for this maze, the Nightmare Nurse, and then I noticed if you take Santa Claus and rearrange the letters, it spells Satan Claus. So that was the inspiration for that character. These are all hand-drawn, and in addition to that, we have an artist who does fine art for us as well. And if you go through Holidays in Hell in the nursery, there's some amazing pieces of artwork.
Yeah, we're just trying to make some visual language in there, and you can see up here with our nursery rhymes that we have, essentially.
Little Miss Muffet that sat on the tuffet, and the cow that jumped over the moon, and I don't know if you can see that, but all of the cuts of meat are labeled on the cow.
Yes.
And in addition to that, the inspiration for this maze was vintage postcards, and we have all these postcards that set up the different scenes you go through. So again, this was done by our artist Lucas Colshaw, and he did custom vintage postcards for every scene in the maze. And we even have to create fake products. So the fireworks stand for the 4th of July scene, everything in it is fireworks brands that we made up. There really isn't a fireworks company called the Mauler. And then we get into costume design and production. The example we're going to use is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. On the right, well, it would be, let's see, my left, your right, is a swatch, right? And that's the first thing the costume designers show you.
Yeah, and we're just really trying to emulate exactly what it is in the film. And, you know, we can really look at it and see that they use some metallics, and we weren't sure if it was metallic paints or not, but you can see our swatch, and that's what we're moving forward with. So, you know, we're quilting, we're doing specific paints and such to really emulate exactly what we're seeing in the film. So.
And then, you know, sometimes we get lucky. With Jordan Peele's Us, one of the first conversations we had with everybody at Monkey Paws, they said, you know, we have a lot of jumpsuits. We have a lot of red jumpsuits, because if you've seen the film, and again, I don't want to spoil it, there's a scene where there's a whole lot of them. And I said, well, how many do you have? And they said, we have like 80. And I said, well, take them. So what I'm telling you is every person in that maze that's jumping out at you that's tethered, that's from the film, straight out of the film. And no, you can't have it. And then we get props and dressing, and the example is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. This maze involved this scene. You know, the maze ended last year. Did you guys like Universal Monsters last year? I'm so glad you liked it, because that's my favorite thing to work on, is the classic monsters. That's my lifelong passion. We ended the maze last year with Frankenstein's monster saying, "What, we belong dead," pulling the switch, blowing the lab up. So the idea for this maze is we would go back to the lab, but it's ruined. And poor Dr. Frankenstein did not make it out. So that meant our prop team had to create all this stuff, and this is the dynamo.
Yeah, and this is the dynamo, and this was from, oh my gosh,
Von Helsing?
I think so, actually, production up. So we hung on to
I know there's gravestones.
Yeah.
This is a little Easter egg for you. If you go through Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and there's a cemetery scene. Right as you go in, Von Helsing. They're all props from the original movie Von Helsing that we've had for years. And this was a maze where it really worked to include them. After they made, one of the things our props and dressing crew is they have to deal with all of these bodies, and in this case, create a burned body. And then this was another Chris idea. I had the idea that the bride would be incomplete, like Dr. Frankenstein was rushing to try to finish it, so she's not completely attached together, and then Chris figured out how to do this. This is a magic illusion, basically.
Oh, yeah. It's our typical in-the-box illusion, basically, what we call bear trap, basically.
Yeah,
That's
this was
what we
originally done
initially
for the
did.
reverse bear trap years ago for Saw, but the performer's body is hidden underneath. You're only really seeing her head, the upper part of her body and her arms. The twist this year is we figured, well, she had no legs, so there's no way the bride would have made it out of the, of the castle once Frankenstein pulled the switch, so she would be burned. So she is burned to a crisp, so our prop crew had to make lots of burned body parts for the bride. And then we get into makeup production. The example is going to be Pandora's box. This was our idea of what Pandora should look like.
Yeah, really trying to make it look really scary in a sense, and a lot of detail within that. And that was actually sculpted by Jordy Shell, actually. So he was a well-known sculptor in the industry. Yeah.
And then special effects. This year we have so many special effects, starting with Stranger Things. We had to create the demo dog. So this is a foam pull of the demo dog right after it came out of the mold. There's a lot of them, by the way, in this maze. And of course, the season 3 creature, the big bad, because this maze is based on season 2, but at the very end there's a little bit of season 3 is a bit of a tease, and you run into the giant head of the big bad. So this was done by our makeup team, Chris, and that is?
Yeah, McGee Effects.
You McGee Effects, so we work with on all of the creature creation and all of the makeup. When you think about it, they're making up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people every night, but they work with us every year to bring that to life. And then there's a movie called Ghostbusters, and for that, we had to create Slimer. So that's our sculpt, Patrick McGee's sculpt for Slimer.
Yeah, you could see the one on, I guess your left, that we're trying to do it how the film was doing it. So Slimer with his actual arms out, and we're gonna do black art as he's UV and black out his legs. So it looks pretty well.
And also the terror dog. So this guy had to be sculpted life-size. It's a puppeted figure being controlled by somebody behind the set. We give them a camera feed and a monitor so they can see all you guys, but you can't see that. So they can time their scares accordingly. They can activate their own audio. They can activate their own lighting effects. They can manipulate the creature, make its mouth move. So a lot of what we do is basically practical effects. I grew up in the era of practical effects. I know you did too, with the great makeup artists like Stan Winston and Rick Baker. So everything we do gets translated back to the world of practical effects. And then, last but not least, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. There's a character in that movie called Clownzilla. And that's the original sculpt for Clownzilla's giant head.
And that was through McGee Effects as well. And that essentially, that's a little different. We usually sculpt with clay, but this is different. This is foam and then fiberglass hard-coated in a sense. And then we hung it, so, yeah.
And then here's the final product.
Yeah.
And that's just a little behind-the-scenes peek at how we create Halloween Horror Nights. All right, and now it's time. Let's bring out our special guest, Greg Nicotero. But wait, there's more.
There is more.
Not just Greg.
There's many more.
Eli Roth. All right, let's crank it up for the last of our guests, Slash. since we've got all these gentlemen assembled here, and all people we've worked with down through the years in Halloween Horror Nights, the first question I'd like to ask is, if you remember, what is the first horror movie you ever saw? We're going to start with Greg, and we're going to go that way.
First movie was Horror of Dracula with Christopher Lee. Nice. It's the first, and that famous shot of him walking in with the bloodshot eyes and the blood and just screw. Can I swear?
Well, it is a pink part, correct?
It fucked me up. All right. Yeah. But that was, my dad was a big video buff, so we actually recorded it like on reel to reel, so we could watch it over and over again. But that was the first one that I remember seeing.
First, I just want to say how fucking psyched I am to be on stage with Slash. I know it doesn't count.
You should have brought some,
But that little box just got checked. Like, just didn't say just Slash. It's not a
Yeah, that's alright. Thanks.
The first movie, and Greg, come on, he's been in every one of my movies. I'm honored to be with Greg. But, Slash. So,
I agree, by the way.
So, the first movie that I saw that probably scared me, weirdly, it's not a horror movie, it's a Disney movie, and that was Pinocchio. And when they go to Pleasure Island, and those kids get turned into jackasses, I was like, this is some shit. Like, really, this is dark. And then when they get eaten by the whale, I was like, and what's so funny is that you think like, oh, you're 3, it scares you. Someone pointed out when Hostel came out, they're like, you remade Pinocchio. I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, I know the kids, they're going looking for sex, like Pleasure Island. They get turned into jackasses. The factory is the whale. Like, they completely realized that subconsciously I had basically structurally remade Pinocchio.
Metaphor for the entertainment business.
Yeah, exactly. So Disney is the one that screwed me up. But then, when I was old enough to see horror movies, I think I was 6 years old, I watched The Exorcist.
Not a good idea, by the way.
No, this is what happens. They say that, Tarantino always says that violent movies don't cause violence, they cause violent filmmakers. And I think, we're all living proof of that.
Cool, Slash.
So I'm thinking about it. I think it was The House of Wax with Vincent Price. And I saw it when I was really, really little, but I remember it very well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first one. But all things considered, you guys, it's a huge honor for me to be on stage with these guys. So I'm like nervous as fuck right now. I'm like a fanboy who got lucky enough to
Hey,
be
did
up
you
here.
check off a box now that you can say you're on stage with Eli and Greg?
Yeah.
I've been on stage with all you guys.
You know what's a good first? A lot of people's first horror movies, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and that movie, because it was one of those movies that combined, it ran on TV, and it combined horror, and the Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman, the Mummy, the monsters were the monsters. They didn't dumb them down. It wasn't like they didn't kill you because Abbott and Costello were in the room. It's all of a sudden, it was like you're an Abbott and Costello, and then like they would murder someone. They were still monsters. So you're like, no, they could really kill them. It was scary and amazing, and the idea that you could combine comedy and horror. It's like, well, this is the greatest movie. Why wouldn't you do this in every movie ever?
Chris, I don't actually know. What was the first horror movie you saw? I don't think I've actually ever asked him in all these years.
It was at my grandfather's house in Elk Grove, California, and he had an old black and white TV. He lived in honestly like a little TV shack up in there in the country. So we went to visit him one night over on a weekend, and I remember watching on that TV, and I was in the other room, and it was some night gallery show where they had a beach scene, and all I could remember was somebody in an aluminum foil costume, and I grabbed my pants. I'm sure it just flipped me out. But yeah, that was kind of the first one. Was an old night gallery.
We were just talking about night gallery, Kolchak.
Oh,
was it Darren McGavin?
I love Kolchak when I saw her. I think that's great. Really, yeah. And that's some of the early ones for me too.
Mine was Frankenstein. I was 4 years old, and my mom let me watch Frankenstein, and it was over. Now I'm going to ask you guys another question. Do you remember the first time you came to Horror Nights? And do you remember the first maze you ever experienced? Okay, wait, Slash is going to start. I know this one, but go ahead.
Yeah, I came down here. I'd heard about Halloween Horror Nights here and all that. for a while, but I had never actually come down. And one time I got talked, I said, hey, let's go down to Universal and see Halloween Horror Nights. So we went, and I was introduced to John through a good friend Chris, here somewhere, and went in the Sabbath maze, and it fucking blew my mind. I just was so over the top, overwhelmed about how great this was. This combination of the 3D paint and the guys on the stilts and the Sabbath songs and the combination of it. I was totally hooked. So that was my when I lost my virginity.
You should have taken Ozzy through that maze.
I could only imagine.
we came out the exit, and there was a sea of you guys with cell phones going, Ozzy, Ozzy, and I was like, whoa, we gotta go.
Yeah, it was intense. I was hooked from that moment.
Okay, we'll go in this order. Eli.
I remember 20 years ago, I just moved to LA from New York, and I was with my girlfriend and another friend, and they said, well, I was like, what is this Halloween thing that they're doing at Universal? Because in New York City, they had the Greenwich Village Parade, which I thought was one of the coolest events, and some other stuff there that I thought was great. And the first maze I went into, I had never experienced that level of intense fear as an adult. I didn't think I could get scared again by anything. And it was like the House of a Thousand Corpses maze. And it was just endless, and it was so much bloodier. It was like being in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I actually got emotional and I started to cry. I started to tear up. I was like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever been. And the girls were like, what's going on? Like my arms had claw marks through the two girls. And I think that they both went home and I stayed until the park closed. And I remember it was because it was kind of the end of the run. It wasn't a big thing. And I went in the House of a Thousand Corpses maze. And at the end of the night, I was so depressed. I was like a kid at Christmas. I was like, I can't believe I have to wait another year for this. And that was like why I did the Goratorium to have that year round. I'm like insane. Like when I watch a crazy horror movie, I want to live in the movie. And this was like the closest experience I had to that.
That's funny, emotional. That's exactly.
I was like, I had like chills and I was like emotional. I was like, this is so beautiful.
Do you get emotional in mazes, Greg?
Of course I do. I mean, listen, one of the things that a lot of people take for granted is, we deal in movie reality. So it's like set up a gag, shoot the makeup, do another take, you want to try the blood, you want to try something different. What these guys do here, it's so different because it has to be live. Like everywhere you look, something has to happen. Whereas we as filmmakers, we control where you look. We put the camera in a specific place. So I'm always blown away by what you guys do because it's so immersive that it's like, that's why we get emotional. We get emotional because we put ourselves in those iconic moments like The Exorcist or American Werewolf in London that we love so much. And you stand there and you go, oh my God, well there's the bed and then there's the closet and her head's gonna spin around. But what I love about what you guys do is that you guide the viewers. It has to be live. The makeup has to be perfect. Everything has to work like clockwork. I mean, we get take 2 on set, and we get take 3, and we can edit it and control how people react. You guys have to control the reactions with the way the maze is constructed. But I can't remember. I mean, maybe the Exorcist. I don't know. I can't remember. There's so many of them. I don't remember the first one.
Now, I'm going to ask, the first time we all worked together, because we've all worked together multiple times, we'll start with Slash. What was your experience like doing the first thing we ever did together, which for us would have been
the Clowns.
Clowns 3D.
It was just awesome. I was like a kid in a candy store having the opportunity to be able to do something like that. I'm really huge horror junkie, science fiction, thrillers, all that kind of stuff. And so to be able to put together some music for this crazy clown thing with these murderous clowns and all these designs that John was showing me, it was just a lot of fun, and it was out of my normal sort of working environment. So yeah, it was killer.
Cool. And Eli?
Yeah, well I remember we said let's do the Hostel maze.
Yeah, we met at Horror Nights.
We met at Horror Nights, and I was like, I want to do, Hostel, that's my dream. So we worked for a year, and it took some convincing, because at the time it wasn't quite what it is now. I had all the original blueprints, and I had the plans, and I had the designs, and I had the props, and I gave them everything. I was like, "This, I want you guys to be able to."
You literally put a cord from your computer to mine and just
gave you everything. So like everything that our art department had to build on Hostel, we gave to you guys, and I just couldn't. I went through it, and I just couldn't believe how beautifully it was done. I wanted to be like the #1 maze that year, which we were, like 2,000 people an hour. Like every night I was like, did we win? You're like, yeah, you guys are the most attended. I was super obsessed with winning. And then, but then the last night, I remember I was like, I want to go back, and I want to work in the maze, and I want to be a scare actor. And I went with the cast, and after 20 minutes I was like dripping with sweat, and I lost my voice. I was like, you gotta pace yourself. Like they're all teaching me. And then when people don't get scared, I was like, that was really scary, what the? And then you like do the, sometimes you jump out, somebody do the silent creepy walk behind them, and they turn around and scream. And watching like a grown person, like 3 times your body weight, scream and shrivel like a little child is the most deeply, weirdly satisfying thing. And I was like, this is addicting. I love this. It's so much fun.
And I have to give Eli credit for starting a Horror Nights tradition that we have carried on to this very day, every single year. He mentioned he gave us like everything from Hostel. He really gave us like everything from Hostel, including the Elite Hunting business cards. So that year you had wanted the Hostel girls out in front of the maze, and I was like, we gotta come up with some shtick, you know, something they could do. And I think it was your idea to have them hand out the business cards that tells you you're a member of Elite Hunting. And we started the Twitter password game that year, and we've done it every single year since then. So you started a Horror Night tradition. And I remember the night you went, because you called me and you went, I'm going in. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And you're like, I'm going in the maze. And that had never happened before. You had the whole costume, and we got like everything. And he did like every single scene in the maze. You went through the whole
I didn't just do one scene, I wanted to try every single scene.
Which was amazing. Okay.
Oh, you got to do it. It was fine. And then I was tweeting. I was like, I will be
I could be Frankenstein. You could be the Wolfman. You want to go in? Tonight? Well, maybe not tonight, but like.
That'd make a good Wolfman.
Yeah, we'll do it. Greg, do you remember the first one we did together?
Yeah, we did Walking Dead together, and that was really, you know, again, you know, we're still doing it. You know, it's crazy to work on something, like have the blueprints. I remember walking through the prison, and it's such a weird experience because you're like, oh my God, I directed a scene there. I shot this. Like, it puts us back into those moments. So I can only imagine what it feels like for the fans. And we wanted it. It was so important. And what I love about what you guys do is it has to be authentic. Like every single maze that these guys have, everything is so authentic. And there's never a moment of like, what was that from? Or I don't remember that moment. Because it's either all or nothing. And with The Walking Dead, the mazes that we did, because I remember going through with Gail Ann Hurd, and everybody makes me stand in front. So they're all hiding behind me. And unfortunately, I don't get scared. I mean, you know, I scare you guys. That's my job, to scare you. So it's a little hard. I'm more like, oh my God, that's great. I wonder if there's a guy there. And then the guy would show up. So I'm more like sort of analyzing it. But I always thought it was funny that Gail, everybody would hide behind me and like push me through.
When we had the premieres for Walking Dead and the cast, that's what the cast would do to each other.
Yeah.
They would like shove each other into the rooms.
Which just goes to show if there was a zombie apocalypse, they would all just push each other in front of the zombies first, so they'd all be dead. So.
And the other thing that Greg, you know, always brings to the table, which we're, you know, supremely grateful for, is he lets us use his molds. So when you guys go through Creepshow and you get into the new part of Creepshow, which is the Shudder series, that's debuting. When's it debut, Greg?
September 26th.
September 26th. You gotta check it out. But when we started talking about this, which was opening night, like right around then, Horror Nights last year, he mentioned Creepshow, and I was like, I love Creepshow. But he has the molds for all of his creatures that he's created. So we get to use the exact same thing that they used in the production. So when you see the maze later on tonight, if you haven't seen it, check it out, because you're seeing the real deal.
Well, the funny thing is, I tried to convince Shudder to release Creepshow early to time it with you guys, because Halloween Horror Nights is so important. that I was like, but guys, Halloween Horror Nights, and we should move to the release of the show up. Like, that was how important it was. Because I thought that people that go through, you know, they need to serve. That just means you have to come back after you watch the show.
Exactly. I'm going to ask these guys one more question, then we have one more guest we're going to bring up. Aside from mazes that have been ones that you've personally worked on with us, do you have a favorite of just any other maze we've ever done in the history of Halloween Horror Nights?
Ask me?
Yeah?
Well, there was the Sabbath one, I gotta
Yeah.
say, because and Walking Dead, the first time I ever saw Walking Dead maze, that was pretty mind-blowing. And then the next one after that, I would have to say, I'm trying to think what it was. It was last year.
Universal Monster? Well,
no,
you worked on that, yeah.
But no, it was
Trick or Treat?
No,
American Werewolf.
American Werewolf. That was it.
Oh,
that was awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's great.
How about
But there's a
Eli?
lot of good ones. So it's not fair.
So many. I mean, last year's Stranger Things blew me away. I mean, this was incredible too. But I was like, I'm such a fan of this show. I loved it. You know, that Krampus maze was. It's the Sabbath. The Sabbath 3D thunder. I was like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, every room was so trippy, and but that Krampus one,
Yeah.
the way you use the smells, like tonight
It's
with
the
the
best smelling
marshmallow,
maze we ever
the
did.
best. It's like you went in and it smelled like Christmas, and it was just there was something so wonderfully perverse about like those smells that were so comforting and just make you happy, and cinnamon and chocolate, and then just like these monsters trying to kill you. It was
I
perfect.
took my girls through Krampus during the day without the performers when they were 2 and 4. And I was like, well, you know, it's Christmassy, you know, and but then they started associating Krampus with Christmas, and they're like, well, where's Krampus? Like when we were putting up the tree, and I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be hard to explain to the wife.
You know, the Seasons of Hell Scare Zone last year was...
Oh, Holidays in Hell.
Holidays in Hell.
Yeah.
That was awesome. It wasn't a maze, but it was cool.
Beautiful.
So we could go on about every year that I've been coming here. I wish I had started coming sooner. I was always on the road, and I just didn't know.
No, your
Then I
career.
showed up, I was like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing in the fucking world.
On the Aliens versus Predator.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you, when I walked around the corner and saw the Queen Alien in the barn, I literally stopped in my tracks. Like, I could have stood there, but people behind me go, keep moving, keep moving. It was so beautiful, and just literally, I was like, holy shit, that's unbelievable. Like, the way you guys engineered all of that stuff. Boy, that was, I remember my kids were with me, and I just stood there, unbelievable, the Queen Alien was.
Made the flow to go right up to her, and actually, if you wanted to, you could touch her leg.
I
And
tried,
that was
but
on purpose.
somebody
so,
smacked my
you
hand.
know, so.
The year I think we did the thing, the reimagined thing. We're opening night, I think, and Chris and I were sitting up on the Psycho House, which is something we do often. And kind of like the night was over, and we were just sitting there, and he just went, alien. I went, what? He goes, I think we could do an alien. And that was the beginning of that whole conversation about how to do the Queen Alien. Well, awesome. Well, we have one more person we wanted to bring out and celebrate tonight. Have you guys been on the studio tour recently in the last year or so? Yeah? Anybody? Yeah? Have you driven down through, when you're going through New York Street, you pass by this amazing monster mural. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's painted on the side of a building. Yeah? Everybody? You've seen this? Okay. I'd like to invite out the man who painted that mural. His name is Tristan Eaton. Tristan, can you join us on stage? Welcome, Tristan.
Welcome, thank you. I was worried I was going to sit slash his lap for a second there.
Well, first of all, as you know, everybody that's on this stage is a fan of the Universal Classic Monsters, and I know I've talked to all you guys about the classic monsters over the years. But I have to ask, and I'm sure the answer is yes. Are you a fan of the Universal Classic Monsters, and if so, when did you first become aware of them?
They're the kind of thing culturally that's always been there for everyone, it seems. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly when. But I'm an LA native. I was born in Hollywood, grew up here, but my mom's an actress. So I was always backstage or on movie sets, and I paid a lot of attention to film, and especially a weird, strange film. I love Godzilla, I love the horror movies, and I remember when you could get 3D glasses at the 7-Eleven for, you know, the weird horror movies that were coming on. So I started paying attention to horror films really young, and I always loved Frankenstein, always loved Creature especially. And when I got the chance to paint these murals, it was a huge deal for me. And I took it very seriously, and I put everything into it. And some of my team who I painted with are here tonight as well. And we worked really hard, man. Shout out to there they go.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. And what was extra special, to be honest, was we started painting the murals, and then the response was so great from the staff and all the fans that would come that they put it on the actual tour. And then I'm like, okay, now I gotta make them really good. I gotta really add the detail. So I spent an extra 2 weeks. I cleared my schedule and went extra hard. And a lot of the detail in the design comes from my trip to the archive, and being able to actually go through the archive, which is a secret location in Glendale somewhere, and go through all the flat files and look at all the posters from the set. You know, Boris Karloff smoking cigarettes, dressed up as the Mummy, and all this cool old Hollywood stuff, but also the illustrations from the Creature from Black Lagoon poster before the text layered on it. Oh my God, this stuff was a goldmine to me. So, you know, the whole project is really a dream, and none of us wanted it to end. You know, we were here for 5 weeks doing it, and it, you know, I wish I could do them all over again.
And obviously, you know, the inspiration comes from the movie posters, and what I particularly love about, as soon as I saw the completed mural, I was like, oh, I love how you worked black and white into the piece in addition to the color. But I imagine the posters were a huge inspiration, the original artwork.
They were, and you know, I'm a designer as well as an illustrator and a graffiti artist and painter and all these things, so the design around the films were important to me to include. They're so rich, and it comes from this era of design where there's no rules. You know, posters would have like 15 different fonts on them. There's, you know, it was just chaos. And I love that about it. And, you know, also with spray paint, you know, spray paint, a lot of people would say is really for painting letters. So, you know, I had to include a lot of the letters to keep my assistants happy too. But yeah, the era that these films came out, there was so much happening in innovation in film and design. I had to try and capture as much of that as I could.
Well, I think you did an amazing job. And what's particularly exciting we can announce for all you guys is you guys have a new clothing line with Bobby Hundreds, right?
Yeah, it launched today for the first time here.
Yes, you can actually, I see some of you guys are wearing them actually. But you guys can actually purchase those. I believe they're in the Universal Plaza. But it's, if you're a Monster fan, and you know, I'm like the ultimate classic Monster fan, I love to see the monsters celebrated in new and creative ways. So thank you for this amazing piece of artwork. It's a beautiful addition to our studio.
Thank you.
And now you guys can all wear it. So get out and bring it out.
And by the way, if you want to do it all over again, I have a big wall at my house. And you can
I'll do a creep show mural for you. That's what I'm talking about.
Any parting words, gentlemen, before we end tonight's discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and what an honor. And you know, we make movies because I literally we're as big as fans as everyone here. And weirdly, I produced a movie called Haunt about people that go into a haunt and horrible things happen. That the guys who wrote Quiet Place wrote and directed, and it comes out tomorrow on VOD. So.
Go ahead, Slash. It's a huge honor for me to be up here and talking with you guys, part of the little club. It's great to
We've built a
you
pretty
guys.
cool club over there.
It's a big honor to be here with you guys,
I mean,
man.
this guy was rehearsing today, you know, and like jamming over here to be with us tonight. So thank you so much. I know how busy you are because I'm constantly texting you in different parts of the world. So thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thanks for having me.
And Greg, obviously, Creep Show, debuting.
Yeah, debut September 26th. Walking Dead October 6th. There's a lot of good stuff coming up. I directed the first 2 episodes of Walking Dead, and they're pretty badass, I gotta say. So can't wait.
I think it's, you know, what's really cool is I think horror is in a great place. The future of horror is bright, bright, bright. And it's such an honor for Chris and I to get to work with you gentlemen the multiple times we've had. Thank you so much for everything you've given to Horror Nights. Thank you guys for everything you've given to Horror Nights. Because without all of you, none of us would have a job, honestly. I mean, it's really
Thank you, John and Chris. I mean, just so you guys know behind the scenes, these guys work. They're already planning for next year, like they live it and breathe it, and this would not be, they built this up. This would not be without the passion of these two guys and their incredible team, and it all comes from the top of this show.
It's amazing. It's amazing to watch these guys in action.
So what we're going to do, Chris and I are going to hang out for, if you guys, anybody want to come up and say hi and everything. I know you guys probably want to get out and see the mazes too, because I want to see some mazes. But you're welcome to come and say hi to us. But thank you guys so much for being a part of our fan preview night. Thank you so much. I do this all the time. Thank you. We really appreciate you guys' support. It means the world to us. So thank you so much. Selfies?